ratio? First of all, we need to remember what a ratio is. And a ratio is a way of comparing two or more quantities. That's all it is. It's a way of comparing two quantities or three or more quantities. So, the very basics, what is the ratio of apples to bananas? Well, we have 6 apples and 4 bananas. And that's how we write a ratio, 6 to 4, using a colon between the numbers. That shows us that there's 6 apples and 4 bananas. What is the ratio of red fruit to green fruit to yellow fruit? Well, red fruit, there's 1. To green fruit, there's 5. And to yellow fruit, there's 4 bananas. So we can make a ratio with as many parts as we need. 3 parts here. That's absolutely fine. We can also simplify ratios, just like a fraction, by dividing both parts or all 3 parts by the same amount. Now, for it to be the same ratio, it must be divided by the same amount. And looking at our example of apples and bananas, we can see on the left-hand side, this was the example we had before, for every 4 bananas we have 6 apples. On the right-hand side, we have for every 2 bananas we have 3 apples, but that's the same as the left-hand side. When we split it into 2, we have 2 bananas for each set of 3 apples. So these are exactly the same. What that means is 6 to 4 is equal to 3 to 2. They represent the same ratio. So we can use that to solve ratio problems. If 3 to 5 is equal to 6 to 6, there's 2 ways we can solve this. And the 2 ways are, well, we can look at what do we have to do to get from 3 to 6. We have to do the same to get from 5 to x. So we have to times by 2. So we have to times by 2 here as well, which means x is going to be 10. The other way is going to be useful for more complicated ones, and that's by comparing things between ratios or within ratios. So if we do 5 over 3 is the same as long as we do it in the same order, the other ratio. So we did the 5 first, so we have to do the x as the numerator, x over 6. And now we can scale up that fraction or solve the equation, which gives us that x is equal to 5 over 3 times by 6, which gives us the same answer of 10 by the simple method. In example 2, we're going to do the same thing. We can get, this time we're going to compare between ratios, that's also fine, as long as you use the same one. So we're going to compare the 15 with the x, we get x over 15, and that's equal to, we have to do it in the same order, so it has to be 16 on top, because the x is on top, and 20 on the bottom. I solve this, we multiply by 15 on both sides, so we get x equals 16 over 20 times by 15. And when we work that out, we get an answer of 12. The other way we could have done that was to simplify this fraction here, this ratio, sorry, and we would have got 3 to 4, and that is equal to x to 16, and then 4 to 16 we times by 4, so 3 to x. We also have to times by 4, which gets us to the same 12. The ratio of Pam's height to Sam's height is 7 to 6. If Pam is 1.63 meters tall, how tall is Sam? Again, we're going to look at 2 methods. And this first one we're going to look at this time is the unitary method. And what that tells us is We have 7 parts, represents Pam, she comes first. So 7 parts is equal to 1.63. The unitary method, we find 1 part. If 7 parts is 1.63, 1 part is 1.63 divided by 7. And then Sam comes second, is the same as 6 parts, so 6 parts is equal to 1.63 divided by 7 times by 6, which is about 1 meter 40. The other method is using the ratios like we did before. 7 to 6 is equal to 1.63 to x. Write these as fractions. We can do it in a number of ways, but let's do x over 6. So that's comparing x to 6. And because we did x over 6, we need to do 1.63 over 7. And then we need to solve that equation. To solve that, we get x equals 1.63 over 7 multiplied by the 6, and that gets us to the same answer of about 140. On a particular day, 1 Australian dollar is worth 0.94 US dollars. How many Australian dollars do we get for 20 US dollars? Well, here we have 1 Australian dollar for 0.94 US dollars, and we want to know how many Australian dollars for 20. So we do x over 1 equals 20 over 0.94. And that gives us an answer of just 20 divided by 0.94, which is 21.28 Australian dollars. And in part B, how many US dollars does 50 Australian dollars cost? So if you want 50 Australian dollars, how many US dollars do you have to spend? Again, it's 1 to 0.94, but this time that's equal to 50 to the unknown x. So this time it's 50 over 1 equals x over 0.94, which means x equals 50 times by 0.94, which is equal to 47 US dollars. So you have to spend 47 US dollars to get 50 Australian dollars. The final thing we can do with ratios is split an amount into a given ratio, and we do that by considering how many parts there are in total. So an inheritance of 60,000 is split in the ratio of 2 to 3. How much do they each get? Well, if it's in the ratio of 2 to 3 in total, there are 2 plus 3 equals 5 parts. If there's 5 parts in total, we want to find how much each part is worth. So we do 60,000 divided by 5. And that will give us how much each part is worth, which is 12,000. So if Donnie gets 2 parts, Donnie is going to get 2 times by 12,000, which is $24,000. And Marie gets 3 parts, which is 3 times by 12,000, which is $36,000. So those are the things you need to know how to do with ratio. You need to know what